You know, it's really sad. It reminds me of New Jack City.
What is it? What is the OG from?
Variety. But you know they doing that cake too.
They can't do anything.
And then they got the fat, what's the
Where is the K2 coming from?
China. And they say they put in rat poison.
You got things about?
Yeah, I already got it. That's all right, right?
That's fine.
Sorry, I pulled one of these out just so you like me and put it back. Good?
Yes, ma'am.
So
And you don't hear that. You don't even hear this on the news. You don't hear that.
Mary don't want to say the crime is done.
And then and just cue me whatever else you want me to do. It's no problem.
I know that parking
I
spot.
don't even believe it.
That's when
I know exactly where that parking is.
People are so messed up. I hear that a dude was smoking like K2. He gets the thrown out.
Habarigani.
Dude,
All right, one more time, family. Habarigani. All right, one more time so that everybody up and down, MLK, Good Hope, the whole Ward 8, the whole DC, DMV can hear us. Habarigani. All right, family, I want to thank y'all so much for coming out here tonight. Y'all could have been anywhere else in the world with us for Kwanzaa, for Kuchi Chagalia, but y'all decided to be here, and you guys are in for a treat tonight, you know, because right here before us, we have a man, Baba A. Peter Bailey, who just came back from Ghana. He has a whole lot to tell us, to report on what happened on the ground in the last 8 days that he was there, and we're going to tie it into a very powerful concept that was laid before us a couple generations ago, and it's pretty indicative of the direction that we have to go in as Black African people. And that concept tonight is Pan-African Federalism. Please say it with me, family. Pan-African Federalism. All right? So I know you guys are asking, all right? Kwanzaa, Kuchi Chagalia, Pan-African Federalism, Ghana. What's happening here? How are they all connected? It's a very simple answer to that. All I'm asking is that you guys, you know, enjoy tonight, enjoy the festivities, and take in all this information. And as you're listening tonight, take it upon yourself to think of some very powerful questions, all right? Because we're here to talk. We have until 9 p.m. tonight. So I'm just asking if y'all can just bring it, you know, bring all you can, but at the very same time, listen. And also be on the lookout for what we have going on in 2019 as far as organizing in the DC area. Because what we have to do as Black African people is be organized. We're mobilized right now. We've been doing a whole lot of mobilizing. Everybody has a network that they got. They have a business. They might have an initiative. They might have projects that they're doing. And a lot of us are doing the same things. But are we coordinated? Are we organized? That's the question that we got to ask ourselves. And if we're not satisfied with the answer, the next question I got for y'all is, how are we going to get there to be organized? All right? Yeah. Can I get an ashe to that?
Ashe.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. So we're going to get started, and before we move on to the next portion, just want to remind y'all what we're here for. We got the Facebook Live going on right now, which is going to get reposted by WEAC Radio. So for those of y'all who are on Facebook watching right now, shouts out to y'all. Once again, we're here for the Kwanzaa Kuchi Chagalia celebration. And to open up this celebration, we're going to have none other than Baba Senghor pretty much to light the Kwanzaa candle and get us in, you know, set right. Bring the ancestors in and do what we got to do pretty much to get into space. Because we're all here for the season, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful, y'all.
Right.
You ready?
All right.
So, you know, first I just want to warm it up a little bit because, you know, in the spirit of what we're going to talk about tonight, we're actually our ancestors. And for those who do not know what I mean when I say we are our ancestors, just remember this word, Blacktricity. Throughout the Kwanzaa presentation, I'm going to explain to you why this term came through me. It's not mine. It's not about me, he or she. It's about we collectivity for true sovereignty in the 21st century. We need Blacktricity. Blacktricity is a science term that I picked up on after studying Garveyism for so long and practicing Garveyism and actually serving as a president general. So I really take that serious because I believe that we need to come up with our own science par excellence. Blacktricity is much deeper than electricity. Blacktricity is produced through love. You don't need a plug. You don't need any of that. It comes from the Most High, as above, so below. So everything on the planet has to have blacktricity to live. But I see my brother Cliff coming in here from BMO. Hey, brother Tubman City in the house. So, but it's really important for us to recognize that we have to de-emphasize individuality. I'm gonna say that again. Kwanzaa, for me, de-emphasizes individuality. For me, Kwanzaa is a time that we're supposed to reflect upon collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, Kujichagulia self-determination, unity, NIA purpose, and of course, creativity and faith. Y'all got it? Mm-hmm. So it's our time not only to celebrate, it's our time to reflect upon what we've done in the past year and before that, and what we have not done, and what needs to happen. So that when we go in, and we just experienced one of the most powerful solstices of all time. And I don't have time to get into the science of that. But if you understand that no man created that, that was all created by universal order. And there is order in the universe. And we right now on planet Mud are out of order. So we have to accept that responsibility. We can't just say it's the other fellow. I was taught by Garveyites who walk with Garvey that it's about us. We put too much time talking about the other fellow. The other fellow is at war with us and trying to exterminate us and trying to stop us from moving forward and getting back. Now everybody talks about the 400 years coming up, 2019. All that's fine and dandy, but we go back way back, way before the transatlantic slave trade. So anyway, without any further ado, I'm not Diallo, and I'm not none of them powerful drummers, but I just wanted to say that because our ancestors are very much present. And we're going to do libation, and you're going to do it with us because we know libation is a spiritual way of connecting us to that blacktricity that I'm talking about. And we have to be connected. I don't care whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, whether you practice Judaism, whether you're a Yoruba, whether you're Archon, whether you're a Comitition, whether you're Voodoo, or whatever, a Buddhist, or whatever you are, it's one spiritual power that we have to recognize. Everybody with that? You can even be atheists, but science par excellence, some kind of way you got here, right? Okay, so without any further ado, we want to call on the Right Excellent Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey to have his drink. We want to call on Amy Jocks Garvey to have her drink. Amy Ashwood to have her drink. I'm going to call some names you may not have never heard of, but it's very important for us to know that all of those who went before us created our path of where we are today. Drusilla Dungy, Natty of the Maroons, Sabukwe, Thomas Sankara, Kwame Nkrumah, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth. Come on, y'all.
Patrice Lumumba.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, come on. Come on, call them all, because it's more of them than us. That's right, that's a great one. Come on, call them, y'all. Yes, come on, Fannie Lou Hamer. Come on, call them out. Don't wait, just call them out. Come on. Malcolm X. Come on.
Carter G. Woodson.
Carter G. Woodson. Duke Ellington. Come on, y'all. Khalid Muhammad.
Bobby Wright.
Bobby Wright. Oh,
Francis
Cress Welsing.
Medgar
Edwards.
Worthy Muhammad.
Yes. Come on, call them all. Come on. Don't be ashamed.
Hassanatu.
Oh, yes.
Sekou
Touré. Kwame Ture.
Chancellor Williams.
Chancellor Williams. Oh, my goodness.
Julius Nyerere.
Dr. Clark. Joseph Benjo Khan.
Yeah.
Come on, Asa Hilliard. Imhotep.
Julius Nyerere.
Julius Nyerere. Oh, yeah. So anyway, we want to call on all those to come join us who wish to come join us, and we recognize that many of them are in us. Winnie Mandela, yes. And we want to call on all those whose names we may not know who wish to come join us to help us in this fight moving forward. As the Right Excellent Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey said, look for him in the whirlwind to be the real Marcus Garvey and to bring countless millions of ancestors with him to help us in this battle against this pus of the system of white supremacy that we are battling against. So I say Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Very good, y'all. Now we're gonna do this Kwanzaa, and I know most of the people here know about Kwanzaa. So we have to talk about 1966, right? Everybody knows Kwanzaa was created out on the West Coast, right? Everybody knows that, right? Yeah. Oh, you didn't know that? Okay, good, brother. So in 1966, Dr. Malana Karenga, through the organization called US, and it was some other people as well, and I'm not gonna get all into the other folk, but that's how Kwanzaa came out of Kawaida. So the 7 principles of Kwanzaa were already, the 7 principles were established, and they were incorporated into a universal practice called Kwanzaa. Now, I told you earlier, I'm not dealing with individuals. For those people that got issues with Dr. Karenga, hey, y'all let that go. This is a universal celebration that has now gone all over the world. And if you didn't hear me on WL the other day in Baba Lumumba, what we were talking about was the importance of us recognizing that there is no other holy days or days that we celebrate that were created to bring all of us into the nucleus of unity. There's not any. And then some folks say, well, Kwanzaa was created. But y'all know any holy days or holidays that weren't created?
Nope.
So the reality is the 7 principles are very universal. And it's primarily for black people, African people, Nubian people, Akabalanian people, all these nomenclatures we got. We know that Kwanzaa represents unity, and we want to light that candle. Now, what is unity? Umoja. Julius Nyerere is primarily responsible with us even talking about Kiswahili. Y'all know that, right? Y'all know? Dr. Julius Nyerere from Tanzania? Anyway, we're going to get into that later because that's one of the people, one of the ancestors we're serious about. But anyway, due to that, come on in here, Kalichi, my brother. You got those calendars, man. You can pass, make sure everybody here got one. So it's important for us to recognize that if we're standing on the shoulders of our ancestors and we talk about unity, then unity is critical. Now, up here we have you might not be able to, you're going to see it when I light it, but this Kanara is a Sankofa, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to go back and fetch it and to go forward. So without any further ado, y'all know what unity means, right? Yes, to strive for what? Building what? Building in yourself, your family, your community, your nation, and we know what nation we're talking about, right? And your race, right? So without any further ado, when I light the candle and say a bargain of unity, which was yesterday, and it was awesome, Brother Kalichi. Y'all did a remarkable job at organizing, brother. I just want to say that real quickly while I'm running through this candlelight service. I got to hit y'all up over in Northeast, and I got to go down to Thurgood Marshall. I didn't get over to Union Temple. I wanted to get there too, but that was a little too far to travel. But it was awesome, Kalichi. And brother, DC is known, the world should be watching how Banneker City celebrates Kwanzaa. But anyway, without any further ado, when I light the candle like Baba Rafo say, you know, it's Kwanzaa time. Y'all know what to say when y'all see the fire, right? Did y'all know who Baba Rafo was?
Yay-bo.
J-Bo. Huh?
Yay-bo.
African people, it's Kwanzaa time. Yay-bo. Yay-bo. African people, it's Kwanzaa time. Yay-bo. Yay-bo. African people, it's Kwanzaa time. Kwanzaa time. African people, it's Kwanzaa time. Yay-bo. Yay-bo. That's Baba Rafo left that with us. But anyway, I'm going to light this candle right quick, and we light the black first. Okay, y'all see the fire?
Yeah.
Umoja.
Umoja.
You're right. Now, we're going to talk tonight about the importance of unity, but tonight is self-determination. So, Kalichi, I think I'm going to do this right. I know it's the red, but I like to go all the way over. I don't like to do the one right next to the black. So anyway, if that's not correct, but you know, correct me. But that's how I like to do it. I go all the way over to this side, and when I like this one, y'all know what to say, right? Yeah. One of the most powerful Kiswahili words on the planet. And one thing, little children remember it like this one. So anyway, y'all gonna all say it when I light it. All right, there you go.
Kujichagulia.
Kujichagulia. Say it again.
Kujichagulia. 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 Kujichagulia.
Self-determination.
Self-determination. self-determination.
So anyway, that's good, y'all. Now, I want to thank the DC Kwanzaa Planning Committee for allowing us to host this night, because historically, even before Kwanzaa was established in 1958, Kwame Nkrumah called together the All-African People's Conference in Ghana. How many did not know that? Y'all show your hands, don't be ashamed. Okay, it's important because, you know, Ghana got its independence a little before that, right? In 1957, right? Is that right? Right? So immediately after Ghana got its independence, Kwame Nkrumah called the All-African People's Conference and called leaders from around the country to come. And guess what? The President General of the UNIA was there. William Sherwood was there. So not only African leaders on the continent, he called leaders from everywhere to that conference, and they conferenced and set things in motion. I'm not going to go any further because I know Brother Bailey, and we might talk about that later. But that's important because that was 60 years ago. And 60 years ago, Kwame Nkrumah's objective was, just like Marcus Garvey said, he said, don't give me an island, I want a continent. I don't want Jamaica, I want a continent. Kwame Nkrumah said the same thing. He said, Africa cannot really totally be free unless all of Africa is free. So he called this conference. And it's important. Well, just recently, the 60th anniversary was celebrated. At the same days, December the 8th through the 13th, 60 years ago, 1958. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time telling y'all about what happened between 1958. How many were born at that time? How many were born? Cliff, Blam, Bam. Few of us in this room were born. But the fact of the matter is, we was on our way to get some what we call liberation on the continent. Y'all know what I'm saying? Garvey left in 1940. So years after that, the revolution was rolling. You know, liberation on the continent, country after country. And from 1957 all the way up to when so many of the countries got their independence, it was serious business. So Mr. Charlie was like, oh my goodness, we ain't gonna have this capitalist ability to get all these resources if these countries get control of their own destiny. So what happened? They started, they started killing people. They murdered Patrice Lumumba. Yeah. And so many others. I mean, I believe Senghor Machel, it's so many that they murdered. And it went all the way up to 1987. And my brother Thomas Sankara. The centennial year of Marcus Garvey, while we was in Jamaica, we got the news that Thomas Sankara had been murdered. Thomas Sankara, with just 4 years, started changing the whole paradigm of how people looked at unity. He came to Harlem and said that Harlem was his White House, or his Black House, and you gotta check Thomas Sankara out, because for real, he changed the name of the country, he changed the culture. He was one of the, my sister Afiong, and I'm going to stop shortly, but my sister Afiong, who's from Nigeria, she said that he was the baddest womanist on the planet. Thomas Sankara was the baddest womanist on the planet. You know what? He empowered the black women. And so Thomas Sankara, even today, the contingency, and I don't know whether you saw it, but David Horn told me that the strong youth contingency that came from his country was off the chain. Yeah. They walked in like, pow, because they understand that when Thomas Sankara was assassinated, that you could not assassinate the spiritual Thomas Sankara. And by the way, we're going to be, the Pan-African Fellows Movement is going to be doing a Thomas Sankara Day every year in October from now on in DC. And maybe.
I missed the last one. The last one was the first weekend in October. It was over there on Adams Morgan off of on Columbia Road, I believe, right? Right,
on Columbia Road, right. The Festival Center.
Yeah.
So it's very important, though, for us, because our young people need to know these ancestors. And we need to recognize, those of us who've been around, that we may not be above dirt when the real revolution is completed. Now, that's a reality we have to accept. But we have to pass that information on. And Kwanzaa is a perfect paradigm for us to build from. Because when you say unity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, NIA, purpose, creativity, and then Imani, faith. Those principles are so powerful, and they're universal principles, but they're powerful for us to work on ourselves. So anyway, in closing this candle lighting ceremony, I was supposed to share a few words with you because being born here in Banneker City, I started celebrating Kwanzaa in 1968 when I was in 11th grade, going to the 12th grade. And for me, the Shrine of the not the Shrine of Black Madonna, excuse me, but the Temple of Black Messiah, with Reverend Shaka Musa and Mama Nia, who's still with us. It was still a legend in our community. They were powerful. And they made sure that DC continued what was happening on the West Coast. And Kwanzaa has been kicking ever since. Ujamaa Shule, Watoto Shule, Roots Learning Center, and also Roots Activity Learning Center. And what we're here to talk about tonight, we want to make sure that be clear when we say the Pan-African Federalist Movement, we're not renewing the revolution. We're not renewing or creating a new organization. It's a movement. And we want all organizations and institutions to continue doing what they're doing, but be connected globally. And not necessarily meaning that everybody is going to help do the hard work. Right, Brother Bailey? but we represent all African people.
That's right.
And if you don't know the history of Pan-Africanism, it didn't start with W.B. Du Bois. Henry Sylvester Williams. And some people always leave out Anna Julia Cooper. Have y'all ever heard of Anna Julia Cooper?
Yeah.
Well, Anna Julia Cooper taught Nanny Helen Burroughs. Anna Julia Cooper taught at Dunbar High School. Anna Julia Cooper was working with Henry Sylvester Williams. Sometimes we always talk about the brothers and we leave out the powerful women. But Tony Martin taught me well. He's like, Senghor, there ain't no revolution nowhere, not with no people, that has not been led by women and young people. The older brothers catch on, just like South Africa. That's a good example. You know, the sisters were like, we get rid of these pasts. They burn them. So they ignited the brothers who were subject to be actually killed if they didn't go to work. Y'all understand what I'm saying? But it started with the sisters. So let's be very clear that what we see happening in the world now is interesting. But the leader that was just elected of the IPC, the International Planning Committee, is Sister Kathy out of South Africa, a sister. And Brother Jume, who pulled all of us in, I think is the assistant. And we're going to run that down to everybody, explain what I'm talking about, because initially back in 2014, during the centennial of the UNIA, there was a group of brothers in Senegal and sisters who decided that we got to get back to what Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Sekou Touré, even Jomo Kenyatta, even though he went way left field later on, he was there early, and I mean a whole lot of others, laid out for a unified Africa. So the Organization of African Unity, which you're not going to hear a lot about tonight, was established, and let's don't leave out Haile Selassie. Because sometimes people try to leave the Emperor Haile Selassie out when he housed the first gathering in Ethiopia. And I'm not getting into all that. I mean, people, you know, I love the Rastafari. But the reality, we're talking about what these leaders did collectively for the sake of building Africa. We're not talking about the shortcomings of them or the differences that they had. We're talking about the things that they work for in common. And you see today Ethiopia and Eritrea is now, that's deep, ain't it? In 1991, when Eritrea got their independence, we were having our convention in Los Angeles, and they were right there celebrating. But so it's some interesting things going on. And in Rwanda, most of the people that run the country now are Rwanda women. Did y'all know that? No. Yes. 80%. So there's something happening. And we need to recognize it. I'm not talking feminism, I'm talking womanism. And that's no offense to feminism, y'all. Womanism is when black women stand up and say, we're sick and tired, like Fannie Lou Hamer said, of being sick and tired. So I just want to say, as one who's grown up here in D.C. and studied the Kwanzaa movement, it's beautiful. Right now they're having one in my house. right now. Because certain things happened, a brother transitioned, and they wanted to pull together a lot of the young people who grew up under his tutelage, Brother Ibrahim in Senegal. And so consequently, that's what's happening in my house. But I had to be here with the Pan-African Fellas Movement. I've been working with the Pan-African Fellas Movement since at least over a year. Back in May, we held our first gathering at the Davis Center, and we had brothers and sisters that came from everywhere and came to the Davis Center. How many here was there at the Davis Center? You were there, Ismira. Y'all, we were there. Well, I'm telling y'all that from that, we were planning for this pre-Congress coming up that came just recently in December. And trust me, people came from Canada, from Philadelphia, from Atlanta, from Chicago,
Florida,
from Florida, from LA. Well, yeah, I said LA.
Atlanta.
And a brother actually came from Africa. And so,
in Paris.
exactly, in Paris, right. So the point I'm making to you all is, it's been organizing. We've been organizing. And to set the stage for my brother Bailey and brother Sam, who is the leader of the local initiating committee of this area, brother Sam is. Over 80% of the people that registered at the conference in Ghana were young people. Well, you know, that's what I was told by, you know, my brother. Because the key with that is young people are very hungry. All over, East Africa, West Africa, North Africa, South Africa. So anyway, Brother Bailey is my elder, and he had the experience of getting there. Brother Sam and I were supposed to get there. We didn't get there. I'm not getting all into those details. But we were definitely chartered to be there. The brother that is the head of RIC North America, which, as Brother Bailey has always stressed to us, we are a continent. And we have to look at ourselves as a continent where we have 8 RICs, I think, around the world. 8 regional initiating committees around the world. They're in the UK, all over Africa, in the Caribbean, in so-called Latin America, and in what is considered the United States and Canada is RIC North America. Well, the brother that is head of that, Brother Amaseta, also known as Edward Brown, is in Florida. And he was at the conference and he did a workshop. Later on, you're going to hear from our brother Bailey, and he's going to explain to you not only what happened at the conference, but his experience, because the good news about Brother Bailey getting there, and he'll tell you, he stopped flying a long time ago. But he got on a plane to go to this. And he took one of Malcolm's daughters, well, he invited her, and she went. So Samir Nkrumah, who is in Ghana, and remember I told you about the Senegalese connection, right? And Brother Jume and Brother Amadou Sek, who is our, works with the leadership of RIC. Well, Brother Bailey chose to fly there, and Malcolm's daughter was there. And Samir Nkrumah was primarily instrumental in organizing and connecting us to the Kwame Nkrumah Institute, along with the Pan-African Feminist Movement. So it's very important to understand Garveyites were there from all over, even from Belize, all over the place, but not just Garveyites. And I want to make it clear to you, we're not dealing with I'm into this or I'm into that. We're dealing with the issue that relates to the lack of Pan-African federalism or Pan-African functionalism in practical application. Meaning, we can disagree, but we can't afford to be disagreeable. Because that feeds the other fellow. And the divide, and this is important, the continent itself. It's a continent. All this divided country thing was broken up at the Berlin Conference. I mean, you shouldn't have to get a visa and a passport to go from one country to the other country in our country. And look, Africans here we are expatriates. And it's a whole lot of expatriates that are in Ghana and other places. My brother Harua Forai is in East Africa now, just bought land in Tanzania and living in Rwanda. So you see, and you're not going to get this on the news. but they're brothers and sisters making moves. So if you want to expatriate and you want to be an expatriate, it's ways and means you can do that. Brother Bailey also got to visit a place, Jerry's place. A brother who's a Garveyite, who has been there, about 14, 13 some odd years? 14 and married to a Ghanaian sister. I was able to go to that place. Mbog was there 2 weeks ago, or 2 weeks before you got there. And many people have gone there. They got an ancestral wall in Prom, Ghana. That's incredible. It's incredible. And expatriates are all over the place. They all over the place in Ghana. And the right to abode. And let me close on this point. Ghana is calling for this 2019 right to return.
Year of return.
Year of return. It didn't just start. Sister Amicus with One Africa been there almost 40 years. So, but it's a method to try to get Africans to do the kind of stuff my brother Diallo Sumbri and some other folks are doing, taking younger people to Africa so people understand Africa is not, well, I ain't gonna go there, but y'all know how it was when we were young, how people made us think Africa was. It ain't like that. So anyway, Kwanzaa time is a very important time. Today, we're going to focus on the Pan-African Federalist Movement and why we did this on Kuja Chakalia Day, why we chose to come to We Act Radio. I want everybody to put a black hand together for Brother Kamon of We Act Radio. Because he demonstrated self-determination. Now, and I'm not going to go all into the story, but I mean, he's here. We Act Radio is here. And I applaud you. I think yesterday y'all did a book drive thing where you gave books away. I mean, Southeast DC, Martin Luther King Avenue, that is institutional building. And then right next door, that's building institutions. That's self-determination. So we want everybody to feel a connectedness to the Pan-African Federalist Movement. There's some chairs up here, my sister. You could come on up. There's a couple chairs up here. Y'all don't have to sit in the back. Y'all can come on up. So I'm excited, and I want to, like Sam said, I want y'all to feel at home. I want you to ask the kind of questions, and if we can't answer it, we will work to get the kind of answers that you may need. Is that not right, Sam?
Definitely.
So if it's okay with you, Brother Bailey, if I covered a little bit during the question and answer period. I'm going to turn it back over to my good brother Sam, because what I want y'all to leave here with is understanding of what the Pan-African Federalist Movement is, and you probably will hear this word Pan-African Federalist Congress. And I told some people the other day that don't take what we're doing lightly, but we're not interested in a lot of numbers of people. We're interested in people answering the call, continuing doing what you do, and being connected to brothers and sisters like you all over the world. Because one of the most important things you should learn from today is the only thing we're lacking in this war on us is enough power to get on the offensive and win. We got everything, y'all. We the best artists, we the best athletes, we the best we got all that going on, but somebody else is profiting from it. As other people are profiting from the land in Africa. And get this, you may not ever go to Africa, but Africa is going to come to you once we control the resources, because Africa is the most wealthiest continent in the world. The people are impoverished because other people are taking out all the resources of Africa back to their countries. We would not use this at all if it were not for the blood that has been run in the Congo. You would not be driving an automobile with Firestone tires if it were not for the blood and sweat of the young people who worked on the plantation of Firestone's plantation in Liberia, Izmira, that they don't even own, that was earmarked for the Garvey movement.
Yes.
So we have to understand that we have to get busy changing the paradigm and switching things. And don't be afraid. The opposite of fear is love. No, I'm serious, because they already are exterminating our brothers and sisters. And I'm not advocating, anything other than you exercising your blacktricity. Raise it up. all that's going on. Don't put all your energy in what's going on with 45. Forget that. No, I'm serious. Forget that. I'm not talking about don't be conscious of what's happening, but don't put all your energy into what's going on and whether they're going to get rid of him or this. Because ain't no president, including Barack Obama, ever got in the White House practicing Coochie Chocolate for African people. That's just not real. In fact, we would not have Donald Trump if we didn't get Obama. I mean, think about that. Anyway, without any further ado, and we can get down to the local politics too.
Yes, sir.
All right?
Yes,
Because be very clear, just because you got black politicians, if they're not working on issues in this war that we in right now, we really better take a close look at what the so-called black faces in high places are doing, compromising with the other fella.
Hey.
Sam wanted me to touch on that because D.C. still is a Democratic town, but it's still a low voter turnout and everything. And consequently, the people that we really want to win normally don't. And folks outside of this area who put money into the city, and I know what I'm talking about because the first mayor of this city that was black was in the church that I grew up with, Walter Washington. And so we got to be very clear. I'm not talking about the first mayor. The first mayor was white in the city. Most people don't know that. They appointed a mayor way back longer, but he was the first black mayor. So every mayor, and of course we love Marion Barry. Marion Barry came through SNCC, and we know he did the best he could. But the reality is that the politicians are not practicing Coochie Chocolate. Anyway, thank you.
Let's give him a hand, y'all. Let's give him a hand. Baba Senghor, I really appreciate that, and I'm just going to use the mic because I don't have a voice quite like yours. But what you were saying just now provides the perfect foundation for what I would like to speak about in terms of Pan-African federalism, and this goes back to what I said in my opening remarks earlier, just connecting what Baba A. Peter Bailey is going to drop on us tonight. That idea of Pan-African federalism in just local politics, what do all of those have to do with one another? And not to forget Coochie Chocolate, right? So let's revisit Coochie Chocolate real quick, all right? And I'm going to do my best to organize what I want to say in my head because it's just so much that I want to impart on y'all to make it as simple as possible. And it's very simple, right? Once you understand Coochie Chocolate and Pan-Africanism. Now, anybody in here younger than 20, by any chance? Or in their early 20s? Let's do 20s. All right, so my 20-year-olds, all right? Coochie Chocolate, what does that mean?
Self-determination.
Self-determination. What does self-determination mean exactly? Ashe, right? So determining your own path, charting your own path. Any other takers about Coochie Chocolate?
I think a lot of it, self-determination, also have to do with having the right knowledge, because you don't want to make your determination off of nothing. So it has to have a base that is rooted, usually, hopefully, within your own culture and actual knowledge of the world, so that you can really make a self-determining decision.
Exactly. So what we're talking about here as a Black African family is being able to chart our own path, right? To make our own destiny. And I would like to add to what my fellow so-called millennial said, defining ourselves as Black African people. Who are we? What is our culture? What are our social norms? What is it that we do as a family? When we're talking about organizing, how is it that we organize? Do we organize according to their paradigm, or do we set a new paradigm, right? And when we're talking about Coochie Chocolate, you have to understand that self-determination is a human rights issue. It's not just civil rights. We're talking about human rights. How can I, as a human being, once I am out of the womb in this realm, how am I able to chart my own path without obstruction from the powers that be? And the honest answer to that is, for at least 400 years, we as Black African people on this continent have not been able to do that. And that continues to this day, because we collectively have not been able to grasp this idea of human rights, being able to be sovereign over our own affairs and being able to control our own destiny as Black African people, not only as a nation, but as singular families and as individuals. But how can we control our destiny if we don't even control our education systems? If we don't control where our water comes from? If we don't control our media, right? If we don't control who gets in the office? If we don't control various aspects of our lives, how are we able to do that? But I also have another bomb to drop on y'all, right? We're not the only ones in this world who are going through similar issues. The fact remains that because we're locked down here, there are people all around the world who look just like us, who have common lineage back to the mama Africa, who are going through similar situations. It's along the lines of what Kwame Nkrumah called neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. Now, for those of us who don't know what neocolonialism and neoliberalism is, it's a system, right, where they make you feel that you're independent nominally. So you're only independent in name, okay? You have your own city, you might have your own organization, you might have heads of state, people who are in power, who look just like you, who were voted in democratically, so they say. But at the very same time, in this day and age, we have corporations who are running the show, okay? We have corporations, you know, it might be about 6 or so of them who control every aspect of our lives, who at a moment's notice are able to pour money, okay, into various facets of the people who control what we do, who are able to manipulate our existence on this earth. And they are the ones who are competing against people in our community, the small business owners, right? When you're thinking about people who, you know, who make shirts, who make jewelry, who make, you know, wares and different things like that for our community that you see vending throughout, you got to think about, and this for my economics folks, the means to production, right? Where are they getting the material from? Who's the plug that's helping them get everything wholesale before they sell it? Is it a black African face? If they want to find a black African person to buy wholesale material from, where are they going to get it from? Oftentimes, the answer is not as simple as it seems. And that's because of neocolonialism. That's because of what the market has done over the last few decades or so to concentrate power within the hands of the few. Now, Sam, you've been rapping for a very long time about international issues. What does this have to do with DC? Okay, I'm about to break it down to y'all. Okay, what happened on Sheriff Road in front of the barbershop this past summer? Okay, we're talking about the gentrification here. How is it that we're always the last ones to know about what's going on, right? Even with people in power who mean well, we're always the last ones to know what's going on, right? How is it that you have people, you can't even get a loan now for a bank? You have to go through hoops and hurdles to get a bank loan. Even if you own a small business, you understand? They want to see tax information. They want to know the name of your first and last born. They want to know A, B, and C, and D about you, right? Even with the black banks, okay? The black banks are backed by white institutions, white-owned institutions. So no matter where we go as black African people in DC, we're caught up in a corner where we're not quite self-determined just yet. And let's break it down even further, right? You have a DC council which revoked the vote, right? Now understand, right? There might have been, you know, some qualms with, you know, the bill or whatever the case is. I too had my qualms, but when you have a legislative body that takes back the vote of the people, you understand? If the people approved something by a 10-point margin and then the legislators vote to take it back, we have an issue on our hands where people don't feel self-determined and they don't have faith in the system. And that is quite evident by the voter turnout that just happened in the June 19th primary. I believe in at least Ward 8, it was in the single digits. Across the city among our people, it was a little higher, but still not significant, okay? So there are a lot of issues. We're talking about K2, right? So how is it that even with the laws in place, store owners are still able to sell K2 in majority black places, and people are nodding off in public spaces, and people aren't doing what they're supposed to do? These are issues that are political in nature, but we are very scared of politics because we've been misinformed about politics. Politics isn't just about debating and voting and this and this and that. It's about organizing. And for the last 40 years or so, since we all became conscious, or at least those of us, the generation before me, we've been doing some mobilizing and we've been doing some organizing. But the issue is keeping our institutions open and passing that knowledge from one generation to another and making sure that everybody who's doing the same thing are organized and can exchange resources toward one common goal. So today's presentation is twofold. The first is to give Baba A. Peter Bailey a platform to speak about his Ghana experience and to speak about the issues at hand. And the second is to put it out there for those of y'all in the audience and those of y'all watching on Facebook to answer the call for Pan-African federalism. Federalism meaning that we're organized under one banner of a black African nation, and that every so-called nation state under that organization is geared towards making sure that the people have the power in their hands. Because what has happened since our nominal independence on the continent, the powers that be have installed leaders that are greedy, that want to starve the people, especially the young people, that want to take the NGO money and build mansions instead of taking that money and investing in communities, building infrastructure, building education. And the same thing is happening here. We have crumbling infrastructure for places in America. Bring any African immigrant over here and have them ride a lift. They will tell you there are more homeless people here than they thought. I've heard it with my own eyes, and I've seen it with my own ears. The same thing's happening here. But the question is, how are we going to organize as black African people in D.C. toward the common goal of taking hold of our own destiny, all right? And you have to understand that we're going not for United States of Africa, but for United African States. There's a clear difference.
Break that up, break it up.
Clear difference.
Break it up for him.
The fact remains that we all come from Africa. Pangea, y'all, okay? There was some truth in what they taught us in school. So we're all spread across the world. So this here, D.C., the little bit of Chocolate City that's left is an African state. Baltimore City is an African state. Chicago, Illinois is an African state. But the question is, are we organized like an African state? At this point, when people have a clear understanding of Pan-Africanism, especially with the immigration and immigration happening across the Atlantic and wherever else, people understand now more than ever our common African heritage. So we have more leeway now, or we should have more leeway, right, to take advantage and build amongst ourselves pretty much a federation. And my question to you tonight, for those of y'all who are in here, is, are you guys going to be a part of building that federation? Are you guys going to look within yourselves, right, and figure out your talents, what you have to give, and decide to become a part of that federation? Now, like Baba Senghor said, nobody's telling you to do more than what you're doing already. That's asinine. That's very stupid. That's more work than we have time for.
That's right.
The answer is to organize. We're talking organization. You're doing what you're doing in the education realm? Perfect. Keep doing it. But understand that you have people in the same realm who are doing the same thing. You need resources from them, y'all trade resources. If somebody in the banking realm needs something, we need to confer with the education realm, organize around that. What are our goals that we're going to set for 2019? How can people in each realm help us work toward those goals? It's not extra work, it's being organized. But it's a matter of if you're willing to answer that call. If you're not, no hard feelings. But if you are, let's get down and dirty. Because 2019 is going to bring town halls, gatherings, planning around how we as a black African nation in D.C. can organize everything that we have toward building sovereignty, not just here, but all around the world. And one more point before I wrap up. Pan-African federalism is not only a matter of human rights, it's a matter of diplomacy. There's a reason why, you understand? There's a reason why in New York, after that Asian police officer gunned down the brother in the project stairwell, and when he got convicted and those Chinese people came out there in the streets and protested, there's a reason why he got off. Do you guys know why? Because them Chinese people are backed by a whole country across the Atlantic Ocean. Who's backing us over here? Who's pressuring the African leaders across the Atlantic to look over here at us, what we're going through, to figure out the similarities? Who? Very few people. Julius Malema spoke on it publicly, right, in recent months, right? But other than him and a few others, who else is doing it? Who's pressuring the young people? Or what young people here among us are organized to pressure the leadership to bend stuff toward our will? Or are we asleep at the wheel until it's time to vote? And even those of us talking about voting, we're always using scaremongering tactics, right? forgetting that we've all been caught in the Babylon hell. So I'm going to stop here for now because we have a whole presentation to go through and a whole interview. I'm asking y'all tonight, think about answering that call. There was a whole sign-in sheet that just went around. I need a name and I need phone numbers, phones that work. Y'all pay that bill. Y'all make sure that when I call y'all, y'all answer the phone. No emails, because I ignore emails too, or I answer them later on. We need names and phone numbers because we're going to follow up and we're going to build our part of the Federation here in D.C. It's time to not just talk about Kuji Chagalia, but work toward it. So, several points to run back down before I shut my mouth, all right? Self-determination, right? Creating a name for ourselves, all right? And we're talking about diplomacy, all right? We're talking about backing from other black African nations and organizing so that when something happens over here, people are willing to step up on our behalf because we stepped up on our own behalf. Can I get an ashe?
Ashe.
All right, family. That's all that I got to say tonight as far as Pan-African federalism and Kuji Chagalia. But best believe, it's not over just yet. Once again, please sign the sheet that just came in. We're talking about town halls all across D.C., at least in the majority black parts, where people can talk about what's going on and we can develop an agenda for 2019 as far as Pan-African federalism is concerned.
Let me make a point about that town hall.
Yes, sir.
And then we come in, Brother Baye. At this point, it's important. Brother Cliff is in the back, and one of the things I want y'all to be really clear on, if you're not ready to deal with the federalism aspect of things and building, in those town hall meetings, you can come talk about different things. We will be partnering, Brother Cliff, with the 6th Region Diaspora Caucus that is doing exactly what the African Union asked us to do in terms of organizing. So I hope y'all understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the town hall meeting is designed for us to come together and work and organize. And organizations are not invited by the African Union. Civil societies are. Right, Brother Cliff? Now, Brother Cliff has already started doing that kind of thing in Tubman City, and other people have started doing that. Brother Cliff also is going to be working with the Pan-African Federalist Movement. But what I'm trying to say to you all is, we want to go through every door that's got a crack in it. Got me? And like he said, we don't just want to put pressure on local politicians. We're going to put pressure on international politicians. And when I say we, I'm not talking about necessarily D.C. I'm talking about the Africans in Ghana, the Africans in Liberia, who not getting just due of the land, food, clothing, and shelter. They have every right of the people, based on human right, to put pressure on their leadership, right? So the Pan-African Federalist Movement is a little different, but it's clearly about bringing us together around self-determination and not expecting them to do just do, but doing it ourselves. Y'all hear me? Yeah. Y'all got me? Yeah. So this should be open to everybody that wants change. That's African, the town hall meetings, because brother Sam is going to be working with my brother Cliff. They have a council of elders in Baltimore. I've seen them at work, but this is also happening across the country, different other places. So when he was talking about us getting support from Africa, we can also get support from Chicago. We can get support from Tubman City. We can get support from different other areas. That's extremely important in unity and self-determination. I'm going to pass the mic back to my brother now. I wanted y'all to be clear, because sometimes people, he gave you an option. I'm saying you don't have an option. You got an option to come be a part of this, or you got an option to be a part of that. You came to Kwanzaa, you about self-determination. Your options are left or right, because we are serious about understanding that we may disagree, but we don't got time to be disagreeable. And I know when Brother Elder Bailey finished with us, you're going to best understand where Malcolm was leading us.
All right, family. Let's give one big ashe, y'all, for everything that was just said, y'all. Ashe. All right, bet. Now, I need a timekeeper, y'all. What time is it, family?
7:24.
All right, 7:24. All right. What time should Q&A be, y'all? I want to make this as natural as possible. By 8:30?
Yep, 8:30.
All right, 8:30 Q&A is good. We're going to give Baba Peter 1 hour of our time. It'll just be a strict conversation, right? Real nice Q&A. But Baba Peter,
We're gonna set this up as we're gonna hold the mic.
no problem.
I know we gotta get to some of this stuff, right? I can always adjust the sound.
Okay, okay.
'Cause I know how you
Good evening, brothers and sisters.
Good evening.
I'm very honored and happy to be with you this evening to talk about my trip to my recent trip to Ghana as a part of the Pan-African Federalist Movement. And but before I do, I think I should give a little bit of perspective where I personally am now in terms of how we as a people should function. See, my thing now is that I'm no longer interested in blaming the white man, the Asians, all this kind of stuff. My thing, when people come to me now and say that, look what the police did to that boy, you know what I say? This is what happens to a group of people who resolutely refuse to organize a national movement to promote and protect their interests. Now that's my position now. Look what they did over here. This is what happens to a group of people who resolutely, because we have refused to organize a unified national movement in this country and around to promote and protect their, and if you don't do that, there's a consequence. When people say, well, you know, black people ain't gonna do that, then my response is, then pay the consequences. Now and that's where I am now. I'm no longer, you know, maybe people say I sound harsh, but that's where I am now. And dealing with, and same with the Africans. When I went to the Pan-African Federalist Movement Congress in Ghana, first of all, it was difficult for me to get there because I have not been on an airplane since 1985. I had decided that I was never going to get on another airplane as long as I lived. Although I had been, before I'd made that decision, I had been to East Africa, Rio de Janeiro, Mexico City, Cairo, and different places around the country. I had already flown. And it wasn't really, I was always a bad flyer, never liked flying. But I did it because with my job, I was with Ebony Magazine at the time, I was a staffer with Ebony Magazine. And then one day a friend of mine, she had a flight that left her for about 3 weeks, totally messed up. And when I saw it, I said, that's it, no more flies for me. And I went on this trip for 2 reasons. Well, 3 reasons, mainly because I really wanted to go to the Pan-African Federalist Congress because of the opportunity to meet people of African descent from around the world. Number 2, I wanted to go to Elmina. It was an opportunity to go to the door of no return in Ghana, Elmina, they call it. I wanted to experience that because people I know who had experienced it had told me about it, how powerful it was. And number 3, my close friends and my family members told me I was getting on that airplane if they had to tie me down, drag me to the plane, and tie me in my seat. That I was going to be on that plane going to Ghana, and number 4, it was a direct flight. Believe me, if it had not been a direct flight, I would not have gone, because I don't like going up and then coming down, and then got to go up again. So we went from Dulles to Accra in about 8 hours, and guess what I flew on? South Africa Airways. I mean, that was a real something flying on South Africa Airways. And the plane was going from Dulles to Accra, then from Accra to Johannesburg. I must say that both going and coming were 2 of the smoothest flights I've ever been on in my life. Though when I first saw the plane, I was still flying back, but they didn't have those. I stopped flying before they started having what they call these air buses. So when I came out there and saw that, I said, man, there's nowhere in the world that this thing with 500 or 600 people and all those suitcases is gonna get off the ground. But it did, and it was very smooth all the way. We had about maybe 30 seconds of turbulence going and about 30 seconds coming back, a little bit of shaking. And other than that, it was a great flight. When I got on the plane, I sat down in my seat, I closed my eyes, and I didn't open them up until they say, you can now unfasten your seatbelts. That's what I finally said. But it was worth all of that, It was worth all of that because the Pan-African Federalist pre-Congress in Ghana was worth it. I had an opportunity to meet black people from all over the world. I had never met any black people from Cape Verde. I met these two young brothers from Cape Verde who are strong Pan-Africanists in a place that they say is Portuguese. It was, controlled by the Portuguese. And Pan-Africanism is very frowned on there. In fact, to the extent of this, I had never heard before. These two young brothers told me that in Cape Verde, you can change your name to a French name, a German name, a Russian name, a Chinese name, but it is illegal, not socially a problem, illegal to change your name to an African name. That's what these young brothers told me about Cape Verde. Now, I have to take that word for it. They live there and they're serious. But I had never heard that before. And then I met a sister from who came from Argentina, and she told me, I knew there was some black people in Argentina, but I thought there was a small group. She said, no, there are over 2 million people of African descent in Argentina. But said the government acts as though we don't exist. So she was there. There was a sister from Mexico, representing the black people from Mexico. And her family has founded an Africana Mexicana museum in Acapulco. And she said, I hope you will be able to come to visit our museum. I said, well, I've heard about, of course, about black folks in Mexico, but they now have a museum that tells the history of black people in Mexico that this young lady's family launched. And I told her that when I can get to Acapulco on the train, I'll come down to Acapulco to see this museum. I met a brother from Belize. I talked to people from Canada and black people from Germany and England and Niger and Nigeria. And I talked to black people from at least 25 different countries while I was there. And that was absolutely, one of the great things about being at that Congress, to talk to people from all these different areas and see how committed they were to the concept of Pan-Africanism and Pan-African federalism. This right here is a t-shirt that was the official t-shirt for the event. And it's called Africa Must Unite. Now, I don't know what these brothers think, but they've never had any larger than extra large. So I couldn't get one that fit me. So I said, well, I'll just buy one anyway, maybe give it to my grandson. But I never could get one that fit me because they wouldn't. I said, there's some people, who like 2X and 3X, that kind of thing, but they only had, the furthest they went up is extra large. So I finally bought one, to give to my grandson. But it was a powerful event. Now, on opening day, the president of Ghana was there. That was my second time hearing him speak, because I was attending a press conference in New York, I think it was in November, in which the Ghanaians announced what they call the year of return. Ghana is making a serious concerted effort to get people from this country, people of African descent from this country, to come to Ghana in 2019. They say for two reasons. One, to celebrate the resilience of African people, and two, to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the first African people coming to what is now North America. And so at that press conference, and they passed out this thing here at that press conference called the Year of Return, Ghana 2019, a proclamation. This is a proclamation that the president of Ghana was there, Ghana's ambassador to the United States, Ghana's foreign minister, and Ghana's minister of tourism was at this thing at the National Press Club here in DC. So they're really serious about this. And they said they're gonna do everything they can to make it easier in terms of, getting visas and all that kind of stuff for people of African descent to come to Ghana in 2019. When it was my time to speak, I was on a panel. I started off by showing them something, and I'm gonna do the same thing here. This is a supplement that was in the 2009 issue of the Washington Post. And I told them that you should understand the Washington Post is one of the 3 national newspapers in this country, along with the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. And this was a supplement that ran in 2009. And I told them, I said, now you will notice that the headline of this supplement is Africa on the Agenda. Africa on the agenda, not Africa's agenda. Africa on the agenda. And then the subtitle, I'm a journalist, so I'm very strong about words. The subtitle is Africa, the key to global economic growth. Africa, the key to global economic growth. This is supplement right here. Now, I said to myself, now if I was from coming down here from Mars and somewhere, and I saw this thing, I said, damn, those people, the African people must be the richest people and most powerful people on earth. The key to global economic growth. When I read this, and I said, what this basically is saying to us as a people, both on the continent and around the world is, how, when you're out in the kids out in the streets and you say, yeah, I'm gonna do so-and-so, so-and-so, and what you gonna do about it? But that's what they're saying with this. They're not even trying to hide or be something. They're basically saying to us, here's what we see Africa's role is, and what y'all and ain't nothing y'all can do about it. Africa on the agenda. You cannot, there is no better way to understand how they see us. And I also told them that when we talk about, as a member of the Pan-African Federalist Movement, and that our position is that there's no option. There's no option. African people on the continent will become continental, or we, and that's people of African descent around the world, we, not the white man, not the Chinese, we will be condemning our great-grandchildren to be forever at the bottom in the international arena. Now that's just the bottom line. If we go back to my position about this is what happens to a group of people who refuse, these people are letting us know. So we can't say that we don't know. They're saying straight up front, Africa on the agenda. And this is the point I made when I did my presentation at the Congress. Because we have to understand this. Now when we talk among ourselves, we can talk about spiritual and cultural and those kind of things. But when we're dealing with these leaders, both in this country and on the continent, we got to say to them and to our people in general. I mean, we can't just talk of, in spiritual and we got to say, we're talking about something for which there is no option. Africa will either become continental or it will be forever at the bottom of the international arena. And our position with the Pan-African Federalist Movement, we don't say the United States of America. We say the continent of North America. This is a continent. And no country on the African continent can negotiate with a continent. Let me sit down with you and smile at you across the table for a couple of days to make you think you're doing something. But in the end, they're going to tell you, well, here's what's going to go down. Here's what's going down. Now, besides the continent of North America, we deal with the continent of Europe. Now, the Europeans don't have the federal system like they have here on the continent of North America. But you can bet your life that the attitude towards Africa as a place to be ripped off is universal in Europe. The Russians, the Germans, the French, the Belgians, the British, the Dutch, the Portuguese, all of them regard Africa as a place to be ripped off. So in that sense, we're dealing with the continent of Europe. In Asia, we're dealing with the continent of Asia, because though China and Korea and Japan and India may fight back and forth with each other and deal all kind of, when it comes to Africa, they have the same attitude, a place to be ripped off. So basically, the individual African countries are trying to deal with 3 continents. 3 continents. Ain't happening. And this is the position I took when I made my presentation at the Congress. And I must say that it was well received. It was well received. People came up to me afterwards and say, when I showed them that thing from the Washington Post, that this is what we got. We have to make sure that we make it clear Folks, we're not talking about no options here. You know, we can do this or we can, no. If we don't do this, and as I repeat, we will be condemning our great-great-grandchildren to be forever in the bottom in the international arena. We will be doing it, not anybody else, because they're letting us know. When people, when black people tell me about, you know, Arabs and all these folks owning stores in the black community, I say you can get every one of them out of here in 30 days. Don't buy from them. Don't buy from them. And they will be gone. They have no alternative market. Asians are not going to come from all over D.C. to come shop to an Asian store in the middle of a black community. They're not doing it. Neither the Koreans, neither the Arabs, anybody else. We got to start letting our people know that we're not providing y'all with no more excuses. We live in an age where there's too much communications and too much information out there. You have to be willfully ignorant in 2018. Willfully, you have decided, I am going to be ignorant. There's too much information out there. And we got to start telling our people that we got to tell them some hard truths. And not only here, on the continent. I was reading, I got this, one of my jobs at the country was to present some of the Pan-Africanist positions of Brother Malcolm. Here's an article, an excerpt from an article that Brother Malcolm, following up on what Brother Sam said. I was the editor of the newsletter of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which was Brother Malcolm's organization that he founded after leaving the Nation of Islam. And he founded two organizations, Muslim Mosque Incorporated for the people who were following him as a Muslim, and OAAU for those of us who were following him, you know, from another perspective. And I became the editor of the newsletter. Now, up until that time, I had not had a single, even remote thought about being a journalist. You know, I was getting ready to go to Howard University to become a political science professor, a teacher, or something like that. But Brother Malcolm, when I began to listen to him and learn the importance of the control and distribution of information, his position that if nobody else will ever get your information out there the way you want it. So you cannot be dependent on that. So we had our little newsletter, and like me, you know, by the time we got ready for our 9th newsletter, I started. Like, if you can imagine this, I am bugging Brother Malcolm by writing an article specifically for the newsletter, because we had been running, you know, press releases and all those kind of things. But I said, Brother, I want you to write something just for the newsletter. So that on February the 20th, 1965, the day before he was assassinated, he gave me this article for the newsletter. Now, I'm not going to say it's the last article he ever wrote, but all I know is that he gave this article to me on February 20th, 1965. And in it, as the brother, that's why I always refer to him as the master teacher, because the brother could really make things clear. And when he talks about Africa, he says here, let me see, where did it start? He says, white America once popularized the expression, he doesn't have a Chinaman's chance. This means that since China herself was dominated by white outsiders, the Chinese people who were living abroad had no real power behind them and were therefore disrespected, ridiculed, and abused, wherever they were. But today, that expression is outdated, out of use. The Chinese people seem to have more of a chance now than the Europeans and the Americans, who formerly ruled, oppressed, exploited, and ridiculed them. China has become independent and has made herself a power to be feared and respected. Although the Chinese are still not loved by the whites who formerly oppressed them, Chinese people are now given respect wherever they are, because they now have a strong and independent motherland behind them. And their own individual strength and respect, wherever they may be, comes from that collective strength and respect of their mother country. Black Americans who are tired of being low man on the white man America's totem pole can learn a lesson in this. Our own strength and dignity and respect are Wait a minute, it went over to one page too much. Are inseparable from that of our mother continent, Africa. As the nations of Africa become independent and the image of Africa and the African people changes from negative to positive to an image of dignity and respect, only then will the image of the Black American, the Afro-American, also change from negative to positive to an image of strength, dignity, and respect. So as you notice, Brother Malcolm does not talk about Pan-Africanism as some kind of, just as a spiritual and cultural thing. He's being very practical. A strong continent of Africa provides protection for people of African descent wherever they are in the world. If Africa was strong as a continent, there's no way that Cape Verde could say that you cannot legally change your name to an African name. There's no way they would be able to do that. Now, what are we talking about in terms of wealth? In this same little thing, I put this together to take with me some quotes from different sources from Brother Malcolm and other Black Pan-Africanists. I took it with me to read from while I was over there. And I came across this article from a book called South Africa, Inc. The book was called South Africa, Inc. Like South Africa was a country. I mean, not a country, but a corporation. And here's what it said. Another approach is to examine South Africa's mineral reserves on which the economy of, listen to this, on which the economy of almost entirely dependent. The country, including the illegally occupied Namibia, now this book came out in 1986, is the Western world's biggest producer. Now folks, listen to this. South Africa alone, according to this book, South Africa Inc., written by 3 white writers, says that the country, including illegally occupied Namibia, is the Western world's biggest producer of gold, platinum, uranium, gem diamonds, chrome, manganese ore, and vanadium, which is used to make high-grade steel for the oil pipelines. The value of its minerals is exceeded only by the United States. Together, they account for about 60% of all exports, and gold alone provides nearly a half of South America's gold mines, produced 670 tons of gold in 1985, well over half of the Western production. Coal is there. I mean, you see, this is not even talking about the rest of Africa, what they have in terms of minerals. And brothers and sisters, I guarantee you that even in the days of independence, that I'll guarantee you that all that stuff we're talking about, less than 10% of it is in the hand of people of African descent. As we speak today. I saw recently that in South Africa, though black people are 85% of the population, only 6% of the land is owned by black folks in South Africa today. See, and these are the kind of things we got to tell our people. We cannot just talk in spiritual terms and cultural terms, and but we got to just some hard. This is all this stuff. It's on the continent. The Washington Post, Africa is the key to the global economic growth. To global economic growth. And this is what we were talking about at this conference. How we can get our people to understand that you do not have an option. You must unite. You must become continental, because you're dealing with 3 continents that regards you basically as a place to be ripped off. And they encourage, I am convinced that what those former colonialists did, they decided when they, we're not going to fight African independence. Here's what we're going to do. If you get 10 Africans on 1 acre of land, and they call themselves the Republic or whatever, they will have an ambassador from Peking and Washington and Moscow and Paris and just the next day. Because they want all these little tiny countries that have no viability as independent entities. None. So they encourage, Africa now has more countries than any other continent. You know there are only 12 countries on the continent of South America, but there are 54 in Africa.
Good point. Excellent point.
And I am convinced that this became the policy of the colonialists. You get 10 Africans who get upset and mad about something, they get a little bit of land, and say, we are now the Republic of so-and-so, and next day they got ambassadors. Because they want that on the continent. And that's what we talked about. We got to make our people understand that. That this is not, we're not talking about an option. The Pan-African Federalist movement is that this is not presented as though it's some kind of option. Africa will either become continental or it will be forever at the bottom of the arena. I'm a history buff. So there's a brother named James Jerry Johnson. Senghor talked about him a little bit. This brother has got almost a block long, a wall. Got all these great leaders on it. All the way back to Akhenaten. Great leaders from all over the African, people of African descent all over the world. I mean, it is powerful. And I said, Jerry, man, could you get me some copies of some history books that are used in Ghana? I want to see what they're saying, what they're teaching in terms of history. And I did that because back in the 1970s, when I went to East Africa, I was at a luncheon, and there was an attractive young woman who was a Kikuyu, who was the same ethnic group. I don't say tribe. It's the same term they use for European groups. They call them ethnic groups. They don't say tribes. She was a Kikuyu. And so we were talking, and she kept referring to the Mau Mau's as terrorists. So finally, I just couldn't take it no more. So I said, why are you calling them terrorists? I said, we call them liberation fighters. And she said, well, that's what she was studying in history, because all the history books came from England. In Kenya in 1970. Now, I don't know whether this has changed or not. So I wanted to see some history from Ghana. So he gave me these two books, Africa and Ghanaian History, and History, Akiola Series History, and it's for senior high schools. Of course, now they're all in English. That was one of the things I saw when I was in Ghana. I'm telling y'all, when I was in Ghana, and we were riding down, by the way, folks, let me tell you, they drive crazy over there. You think you seen some crazy driving over here? You ain't seen no crazy driving till you get on those highways, into that thoroughway. Man, I rode out there to this brother's place as a passenger seat. I came back, I said, I don't want to sit in the passenger seat going back. I'm going to sit in the back. So at least I won't see, what's going on. I said in the back seat, man, I did not want to sit in that passenger seat, because by the time we got there, I was like this. It was worse than the airplane flight. But all along the side of the road, all of the signs, the land, what they call it, what's the big signs on the side of the road? Billboards. All the billboards, all the stores, signs, even the small liquor stores, all in English. Every single one of them is in English. At the university, University of Ghana, where we had our meetings, the building is called the Dean of Missions, all of it is in English. And these history books are written in English. But I must say, I've just had a chance to really read them yet. I've kind of glanced through. And they seem to be doing some serious stuff. I've been very pleasantly surprised thus far. One thing I have a problem with thus far is they use terms like the New World. And I tell people, wait, what do you mean New World? People have been living over here, what is now North and South America, for centuries before the Europeans came. So why is it a New World?
Millennia.
You could have, if you're going to say that, you should say New World to the Europeans. But they make it sound as though there was nobody here, and the Europeans discovered this you know. So, but I got these two books, and but I've been kind of glancing through them. I hope sometime in the next few months to be able to sit down and really go through them and see what they are teaching in terms of history. That was my. This was a weekly newspaper, because they're all in English. This is a weekly newspaper. This is the daily newspaper, again, all in English. I got 6 copies called the Daily Graphic. This is the daily newspaper that I was stealing these newspapers out of the lodge that we were living in. Every day I would get one. And you can see the headlines and everything with that. And I do remember by talking about the traffic, I was reading in one of them that Africa as a continent has a higher percentage of car deaths by car accident than any other continent. And now before I was riding down that highway in these cars with these folks, these taxis, I would have said, see, they just said something doesn't. But I'm telling you, after seeing that, I can just believe that may be very true. That they have the highest rate of car accidents, death by car accident. After seeing the way I'm sorry, folks, they drive, man. I'm just telling you, if you ever get around and you drive, you better be real cool. And now this right here is another paper that I got 2 of these. This is a business and finance newspaper. It comes out weekly. So I picked up a couple of these while I was there. And so this is just some of the stuff that I picked up while I was there in Ghana. And my overall impression of the Congress was that it was really, really, really very, very important and very necessary. And I think we accomplished some serious things because the people who were there were serious. Again, brothers and sisters, I tell this now and again. Sometimes I get criticized for making a statement like this. Nowadays, I'm interested in quality, not quantity. I'd rather have 10 serious people than to have 50 people who just jive it. So you can have numbers. So we had there were some serious brothers and sisters at this pre-Congress in Accra. They were serious. And everybody, it was not all one big harmonious. There were some arguments and disagreements about this, that, and the other. But we put together a manifesto, and we haven't gotten it yet. So I assume I was told maybe another week or so we may get a copy of the manifesto that came out of the conference. I had the opportunity. I met Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's daughter, and Samira, and I met Julius Nyeri, who's one of my favorite leaders of that time. I met his daughter-in-law. She was there, and but it was all. And now, I must say, I am not a very adventurous eater. I stick to what I can see and know. So when I order food, I order chicken and fish. That's it. I order nothing else because I didn't want no goat. I don't like lamb, which are major dishes there, So I just eat chicken and fish, and I had some really nice meals and everything. When I finally got to go to Elmina, it was as powerful as everybody had told me to go into this castle, and which is still basically just the way it was when it was built in the 1400s. With some of the wear and tear that you get. But I mean, they don't have no lights in there, nothing. You go in there, and it's just the way the brothers and sisters experienced it that time. And when you go through what they call the door of no return, at that time, the water from the Atlantic Ocean came right up to the castle. So when they opened that door, they would put the brothers and sisters in canoes, because the big ships could not come all the way up to the castle. So they would put them in canoes and then canoe them down to the ships. But that door, what they call the door of no return, was like, when you went to that door, that's it. That's it. And that was a powerful, to go through there and listen to the stories and remember what I had been told, from historical. It was powerful. It evoked a kind of a powerful emotions. You know what I mean? And a couple of people were actually in tears. I mean, they literally in tears. because of the type of thing that he wrote. But one thing that really kind of that took me a while to get used to is that the young people, because we were on a college campus, so a lot of the volunteers were students, and they would, they volunteered, they would give us water, get water for us, and little things we needed done, they would do. So whenever they would do it, I would always say thank you, and they would say, "You're welcome, Daddy." They call me Dad every single, because I got a haircut since I've been back, but my hair was longer, and I guess you could see the gray very, very much clear. But every time I would say to those students, they would always say, "Thank you, Daddy." And they did it in a way that, that was obviously a part of the culture. It was not something they were just doing, that they were doing, just to show me, for me. It was a part of the way they do it. But that kind of, that first couple of times, that kind of shielded me a little bit, just for them to say, "You're welcome, Daddy." And the male and female students, would say that every time. But I think the students at the university they were really so anxious to know, and they knew of Brother Malcolm. It's like that I gotta say, man, that was one thing I found out. They knew, they did not know, maybe not know a whole lot about it, but thank you. But they knew of Brother Malcolm, man. They knew who he was, and of course they were just overjoyed to meet someone who had worked with him during the last 15 months of his life, and also to meet one of his daughters, Malak Shabazz. She went along with me. She told me she was going along to hold my hand. She calls me Uncle Peter. So she went along to hold my hand when we get on the airplane, because she knew my fear. They had us sitting right across the aisle from each other, on the plane. But that kind of gives you, I guess, I'm trying to give you like a general idea of the whole affair. I would definitely recommend, if you have not visited Ghana, go. And now the Ghanaian president said at that press conference, I don't know whether he's accurate, but he said that most of the people who were taken from Ghana into what is now North and South America and the Caribbean came through Ghana. So that Ghana has a strong, should be a strong connection between people of African descent in North and South America and the Caribbean and Ghana, because that was where most of the people came. They were not necessarily Ghanaian, but they came through Ghana to put them on the ships to bring them over to the United States. What is now North and South America. We stayed at a lodge that was very similar to a like when you go to universities and they have maybe a place on campus or near the campus where parents of students when they come to visit, they can stay. It's not fancy, but it was very adequate, very clean. When you wanted hot water, though, you had to push this button on the wall to make the water hot. Mm-hmm. That had air conditioning. You could not leave the air conditioning on all day. If you left it on, when they cleaned the room, they turned it off. So when you came back into the room, the place was steamy. So you had to turn the air conditioning on to let it, let it cool out. But they didn't let it run all day long, in this lodge. So, we just said, and I would say, folks, if you're gonna take a trip that long, don't go for a week. You gotta have at least 3 weeks. You gotta have at least 3 weeks. Don't go for a week. We went because we were going to a conference. I just wish I'd had the money to stay for another week or so, but I didn't, so I had to come back, at the assigned time. But it's well worth the trip. It's well worth the trip, and I'll end by saying that the one thing that fascinated me, and that nobody to this day has been able to tell me how they do it, is to see those brothers and sisters walking through the streets with a basket of bananas on their head. Now people are giving me I keep saying, how do they do that? And I've had a million different explanations, and none of them make sense to me. I don't know how people can have a basket of bananas on their head and walk. And they're not like tiptoeing, they be walking, just like we walk. With these things on, and they don't be holding it with one hand.
So Brother Baye, before I announce, because I want to let people know about the leadership, but before that, I want to ask you a quick question, because I'd like you to elaborate on how did the young people respond to you when they found out your relationship to Malcolm, and how did they respond to Malcolm's daughter?
Oh, when I was introduced as having been working with Brother Malcolm during the last year of life, and so of course they swarmed to me after I did my presentation and the panel was over. Many of them came up to me and wanted to know more about Brother Malcolm and asked me more about him. And because as I said before, they all were aware of who he was. They may not know a whole lot of details, but they knew who he was.
Right.
I did not have to explain who he was. They knew who he was. And I told them, I said in my presentation that when Brother Malcolm in May of 1964, when Brother Malcolm came to Africa, but he was treated almost like he was the Secretary of State of people of African descent in America to Africa. He had audiences, folks, not quiet meetings or quick meetings. He had what they call audiences with President Nasser of Egypt, President Nkrumah of Ghana, President Ezekwe of Nigeria, President Toure of Guinea, President Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, and Prime Minister Milton Obote of Uganda. He had audiences with these people when he was in Africa. I mean, when you begin to see how he was treated, you will know why the CIA and the FBI and those folks regarded him as very dangerous. Because, you know, we have to remember now, we're talking about that period of time was the height of the so-called Cold War.
Right.
And this country was involved in a major propaganda battle with the Russians. And of course, the Russians was using this, you know, the racism thing against the United States. So for Brother Malcolm to be over there and being received in audiences with these brothers, not no quick meeting at some extent, how you doing? I mean, when he sat down, he said from an hour and a half to 3 hours with each one of those brothers. That was extremely important, which is now why my 2019 project, as I'm gonna do a book on what Brother Malcolm was doing internationally.
Right.
So they will help to explain why.
Glad you went there.
And his daughter, of course, you know, she was like almost like a celebrity. You know, she was like a celebrity. I mean, they want to take pictures with her. You know, everybody over there, believe me, they got these phones just like they got here, man. Everybody got a cell phone. So they all went to do pictures and everything. And I think to the point where she was getting a little bit annoyed. I had to kind of chill her out a few times. Say, go ahead and take the picture, you know.
So just I want you to stay on that point because see, I think this is important. But you know, we talked earlier about the whole Pan-African connection back in that time period. So in terms of Malcolm being represented at the United Nations, how did that happen? Because could you explain to everybody how that?
Well, his goal, Brother Malcolm's goal during the last year of his life was to take the United States government before the UN Commission on Human Rights and accuse it of being either unable or unwilling to protect the lives and property of black people in this country. That was his international goal. Now, he could not take it there himself.
This is important. Listen, y'all.
He had to get a member of the United Nations to take it. And that's what he was doing. His whole thing he was doing during the last 15 months of life was around getting African countries. Now, you know, he probably could have gotten the Russians or some of those folks who were against the United States from a political perspective to do it. But he didn't want that. He wanted African countries to do it. And I found out years later after the assassination, Dr. John Henry Clark told me that he had gotten 6 African countries that had agreed, and there were several others who were leaning that way. The United States to this day, mainly because we are here, has not signed the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. They have never signed it. To this day, they haven't signed it. Because if they sign that, then we can go to the UN as individuals.
Right.
And they don't want that. So they have never signed it. They're one of the few countries in the world that have never signed the UN Commission on Human Rights. So, and that's why the OAAU, when we first formed it, Brother Malcolm always insisted that our organization be called a human rights organization, not a civil rights organization. Because human rights is the international term. Civil rights is within the country. human rights. So the OA, the Organization of Afro-American Unity, we always call ourselves a human rights organization from the very beginning. And he had gotten 6 African credit, according to Dr. Clark, who had agreed. And you can see that when you see that when he traveled in Africa, and I got other newspaper clippings and stuff like that I got from papers and things in those days, which show he was basically treated almost like a Secretary of State or a foreign minister of our foreign minister representing us internationally. And Hoover them and the CIA, those boys, they followed him. They did all kinds of things. And when they realized that none of that was working, they sent back and arranged for the assassination. But none of the other things they tried to stop him were working. So then they sent back. And of course, all of this goes back to there's a British writer named Anthony Summers. He wrote a book on J. Edgar Hoover called, I think it's J. Edgar Hoover, Official and Confidential, something like that. I don't know the exact title. But he wrote a book on J. Edgar Hoover in the 1990s. And he quotes Hoover as saying to then Senator Lyndon Johnson, because the writer in the book describes Lyndon Johnson as then Senator Lyndon Johnson. And according to this British writer, Hoover went to a luncheon with Senator Johnson and said to him, they were talking about different things, and said to him, quote, "We wouldn't have any problem if we get those two guys fighting, and we could get them to kill one another off," in the quote. Those two guys were Brother Malcolm and Dr. King. Now Hoover made that back before 1960. And then of course in the COINTELPRO thing, which came out we finally were able to see what it was like. He said in the second part of it, it says that one of the goals of COINTELPRO was to prevent the rise of, quote unquote, a black messiah. Malcolm X would have been one had he not been killed. And then they listed the people who they thought had the possibilities of becoming, quote unquote, the messiah. This COINTELPRO, of course, was a FBI spy group. And they listed Elijah Muhammad, Martin Luther King, and then Stokely Carmel, okay, later Kwame Ture. And then it said, well, don't worry about Elijah Muhammad because he's too old. And then it listed Dr. King and Stokely. And what happened? Dr. King was assassinated, and Kwame Ture was basically exiled.
That's right.
This is in COINTELPRO. So I mean, all of this stuff, man, is and this is the real deal. So when you get involved with Pan-African federalism, you have to understand this is going to be. I mean, these big boys in these other continents, Asian. I read just something in the New York Times last Sunday about these Indians from India and South Africa. They became billionaires. That father was like a street cleaner or something in South Africa. Somehow they ended up becoming billionaires in South Africa, and they now accused of the current South African president, Zuma, whatever his name was, who was recently out of office. He's accused of being in connection with them, corruption with them. But these were in. So this is what I meant when I say, though the Asians, the Indians, the Chinese, the Japanese, Koreans, they fight each other. But when it comes to Africa, they have a totally continental attitude that Africa is a place to be ripped off and exploited. Right. The same way with the Europeans and the same way with the...
Question for you about that.
Yes, question is.
So before we go to questions, you go ahead.
Yeah, if you could just briefly, what was the conversation around that? Just like the invasion of the Indians and like the Chinese, what were the young people or just anybody that was from the continent? What was their take on that?
Well, the Pan-African Federalists, who mainly I talked to, we understood that as to us, it was we talk about, these units, that they're all there. Now, I don't know, all I know is that when watching Ghanaian television, because my room, they had television set, so I'm going through it. And by the way, they had these Ghanaian, I guess they were Christians, African Ghanaian Christians, and they were having I was watching their show for a while, and they had this huge big white Jesus on the wall. Then I turned to another station, and just as I got to this station, another African religious people, and they were singing. I don't know why, because I couldn't understand. It was, you know, they were speaking in their own language, but they were singing, "We shall overcome." But they sing the most soulful version of "We Shall Overcome" I have ever heard. I mean, they sing it like a gospel song. They sing it like a gospel song, and I mean, they sang that song. But I watched at least, I think, 5 or 6 stations I went through that had Chinese subtitles. This tells you how deeply China. See, we got to get over this idea. Now, Brother Malcolm, of course, used China as an example back in 1964 when he was talking about how a strong China protects people. But that is no means condones what, because China right now is doing the same thing as the Europeans did. The same thing. But we can't just, and what I get, I don't know if you want to talk about the Chinese. Because all they're doing is, I talk about the 3 continents. The continent of Europe, the continent of North America, and the continent of Asia. All see Africa as a place to be exploited. And this article said Africa is the key to global economic growth.
All right. But that's it, because we're gonna do what we said in terms of dialogue and questions and answers. You can ask any questions, but this is important, so y'all need to know and connect it into what you heard Brother Bailey saying, what Brother Sam said, and what I have said about the Pan-African Fellas Movement. And we got a lot more that's going to come to you about what took place. But listen to this, because this is extremely important. The chairwoman y'all heard me say was Sister Kathy, who hails from, she's in South Africa, but she hails from Liberia. She's an Esquire and lives in South Africa, Azania, and she is the chairwoman of the Pan-African Fellas Movement now, since the conference. And also, the deputy chair is a brother named Jume Faye. Now, he's based here. He's from Senegal originally, and he hasn't taken American citizenship. He still got his Senegalese citizenship, but he lives in Jersey, and he's the brother that was at our conference and represented the IPEC that came out of Senegal. Well, now he has moved up, and now he is our co-chair along with Sister Kathy.
He's the one who recruited me into the Pan-African Federalist Movement.
In fact, and Jume says that Brother Bailey, they were in Brother Bailey's house with my brother Cliff. Cliff, stand up in the back. And this was years ago when they came up with the concept of the Pan-African Federalist Movement. And Brother Jume says that the reason it's not the African Federalist Congress is because Brother Bailey convinced him that it should be Pan-African. Y'all hear me? So anyway, that was done. The General Secretary is Aziz Fall from Senegal. The Finance Secretary is Nana Amaka of Ghana. The Strategy person is Michelle Dika Kadindra. And I don't know whether it's a sister or a brother, because I haven't placed the pictures yet with the names. But I'm trying.
Marcel is a male name.
Male name, but I'm trying to give you an idea of the places they came from and who was elected. From Central African Republic. Structure is none other than Brother David Horn, the former international organizer of the UNIA, one of the founder members of the Pan-African Diaspora Union, and also one of the founders of SRDC, the 6th Region Diaspora Caucus, and a brother who's a tenured professor in LA. And his position is, he's from the United States of America, but his position is dealing with structure of helping to build the local initiating committees globally. Because structure is extremely important. As you heard from Brother Bailey's point, you don't have an option. You hook up with, I mean, and I understand what Brother Bailey is saying. What I was saying was not so much an option with the Pan-African Fellas Movement, but I was saying if that's a little heavy for you, Brother Bailey don't want you to even try to be a part of it, because he ain't got the, and I understand Brother Bailey's an elder giant amongst us.
Now, my position is that you cannot organize and persuade and educate at the same time. You have to first organize the true believers.
Right.
Once you get the true believers organized, then you outreach to those people who you have to persuade and educate. But we tried that. I came out of the 70s and 80s, and we tried that over and over again. We would have 20 people, 5 were serious, 15 are kind of swaying back and forth, and we would spend all our time trying to get these 15 instead of taking these 5 and going on and moving. I hope young people don't make that mistake we made. Get the true believers organized. Then once you get the true believers organized, then you outreach.
No, so we are blessed, y'all, to have this giant amongst us right now, sharing with us. I'm telling y'all, we blessed. And so, you know, please hear all and understand that he's dealing with experience. But anyway, communication. And by the way, the Pan-African Federalist Movement sees him and myself as consultants to what happens in D.C. I want y'all to hear what our positions are. We're consultants to it. But we can roll up our sleeves and do whatever. But of course, Brother Bailey is our elder statesman, and that's how we deal with him. But, you know, because of his legacy. And communications, Awa Daidua from Senegal. External affairs, Adama, I can't pronounce the last name, from Mali. Youth, the Kilindi from South Africa. Legal person, Solomon from Ghana. Security is Michael Flores from Belize, Central America. Rick Caribbean, and these are remember I told y'all that we had several regions, right? Y'all remember that, those that were here earlier. Regions are larger than LICs. Rick Caribbean is Sharon Paris Chambers, Jamaica. Rick Latin America is Roy Guevara Aza, Honduras. I said Rick North America, which is relevant to our continent, is my brother in Walimu, KQ Amaseta, also known as Edward Brown, United States of America, and he's based in Florida. Rick East Africa is Louis Maganga of Kenya. Rick West Africa is Bernard Marno of Ghana. I'm sorry, I left one off, I'm gonna back up. Rick Central America is Malika Francos of the Republic of the Congo. West Africa is Bernard Marna of Ghana. And Rick Europe is Lazare K. Zebra of France and Burkina Faso. So he lives in France, but he's originally from Burkina Faso. Rick Southern Africa is Shakula Karis, and that's Zimbabwe. Now there are others that may be added to this, which make up what is called the International Preparatory Committee. Now they were just elected in December, and the reason they folded the IPIC, which came out of Senegal, is because Senegal's original intent was to build the idea out and to create a global leadership. So we just this month got a global leadership of the Pan-African Federalist Movement that will be caucusing, and then locally you're dealing in this area with my brother here, Sam, who's the leader of the local initiating committee, and Brother Peter Bailey and I work with him right arm and left arm, or back and front, however you want to look at it. So I want y'all to be real clear on some of the things that, especially if you heard his presentation, mesh it with Brother Bailey's and what I said, because all of that is relevant to the Pan-African Federalist Movement. And we're going to go into the question and answer period. One other piece is, you mentioned Malcolm's daughter, and she also works by taking people through the United Nations, young people.
Yeah, she works at the United Nations with non-government organizations, especially ones dealing with young people. In fact, she's getting ready to go to some event in January in Costa Rica.
Right. And
she told me she'll be going back to Ghana in June. I don't know if I can get on an airplane again. So I may be anything I do know, I may be doing by Skype.
So
I don't know how to do Skype, but somebody will show me how to do it. But,
some of you may have seen some of the promo too. Dr. Julius Garvey was also invited, the son of Marcus Garvey, but due to some health issues, not with him, but with his family, he didn't go. So I just wanted y'all to be clear, because those that might have saw that, because you saw Malcolm's daughter and Julius Garvey out there. You saw some of the promo out there. But anyway, I just wanted to clarify that he's also in communication with what's going on and supportive of the Pan-African Federalist movement. So I just want y'all to be clear. Brother Sam?
All right, so before we, first let's give Baba Peter a hand, y'all.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
I'm telling y'all, sit at the elders and giants' feet while y'all can, man. Like this was, it's just so good being in close proximity to, people who are there, who have the experience, who have the wisdom. Because when I'm learning, and I'm pretty sure some of us can agree, that history repeats itself and that there are always lessons in history. So we got to take what we learned from yesterday and apply it to today. In the spirit of that, I'm going to open the floor for questions. And while we're doing that, I'm kindly asking whoever has that sign-in sheet, if you can just hold it up in the air real quick. Just right in front. Would you mind holding it up?
And everybody that has not signed it, please sign it.
Yeah, so if you just got in, at any point in the presentation, if you can just sign that list, I'm asking for your name and your phone number. We're making phone calls. We're not doing emails, we're going to make phone calls. If you don't answer the phone, I'm going to leave a voicemail. I'm going to text you. If it's a landline, I'm going to leave a voicemail there too, and I'll call back maybe an hour, 2 hours later to really confirm your participation in this. At that point, I'm going to answer the call. If you're not answering the call, cool. If you are, let's come along, all
Tell
right?
them what explain
No
to them
problem.
when we say answer the call, not your phone call, but to answer the call, because that's the only requirement. Explain.
No problem,
Explain
no
it to
problem. Great point. So as far as answering the call, so this applies to anybody who heard the presentation about Pan-African federalism or who didn't. Answering the call means that you're committed to realizing this Pan-African federalism vision, where we are organizing amongst ourselves in D.C. to coordinate our activities with our brothers and sisters across the continent in the interest of making a federation where we pressure those of us on the ground level, where we pressure the leadership, right? Especially the black African leadership on this side and on that side. We pressure them to relinquish up to 70% of their power and take it and give it back to us. And when they relinquish that power, they make it in the form of a federation where pretty much we're all coordinated. So where you have the Europeans, they have their thing, the other people, they have their thing, we're organizing amongst ourselves to create a Pan-African federation. But that's going to happen from the ground up.
Very important.
Okay? Not from the top below, but from the ground up like the way it was supposed to be. Understand, this was the original vision of the OAU. Okay? Okay? OAU pretty much, all right? What's called the African Union today. But the African Union and the OAU are two different entities. When we started getting away from the OAU, this is what the call for Pan-African federalism came into play, okay? So when we're talking about answering the call, we're talking about you, who I'm asking to join the call, to come on board and help us build something where we can pressure elected officials here, okay, and elected officials on the African continent and other places around the world to relinquish their power and help us create a federation where we're politically organized against other forces out there that want to exploit us for our material resources and our ingenuity. Because understand that there's a brain drain going on right now. Our best and our brightest from the African continent are over here for whatever reason. Okay? And they're sending money back, but as far as the intellectual property and whatever else, it's not totally there yet. So all of this goes into play. So please understand, when I'm calling you on the phone and I ask you if you want to answer the call, that's what I'm asking. And one more point that I want to make. We're not asking you to do anything extra. Not at all. This is not another organization. You don't have to, carve out more time or do other tasks. I understand we're all busy. But the point is for us to organize. You keep doing what you're doing, but you do it in accordance with what other people in your sector are doing. You bring on other people from your sector, and we're organizing for self-determination, for our own identity, for our political sovereignty. That's the goal. You keep doing what you're doing, but it's in the interest of Pan-African federalism and us building sovereignty amongst ourselves locally, regionally, and internationally. And that's why I stopped, y'all. So
I would just like to add that one of the things that I strongly believe, and that I'm going to push, I didn't bring it up in Ghana, is that the African countries who provide scholarships to students to go anywhere, whether it's China, the United States, wherever, they've got to start insisting. You got to come back for at least 5 years. I mean, when you go to West Point or the Naval Academy or the Air Force Academy, you get 4 years of free education. You got to give 5 years. You can't come out at West Point and then go join some corporation. You got to give, and I think that Africans who come here from the continent on scholarships provided by the government should be made very clear. When you finish whatever school you're doing, you got to come back for at least 5 years to the country. I know that the people don't like that, but that's one of the positions. That's one of the things that I'm going to be pushing a position for the Pan-African Federalist movement to take.
So come on.
Let's have the questions now.
This is important though, because we don't want different organizations. We want you to be very clear. If you're in an organization and y'all got issues, we don't need that. Y'all deal with that in your organization. No, this is important. It's very, very important. Also, we're not trying to debate around ideologies. We're dealing with practical application, basic stuff. So if you got differences, fine. But disagree, don't be disagreeable. Because we spend too much time sometimes in formations, battling over differences and not understanding that we still have the same objectives. You understand what I'm saying? You heard what Brother Bailey was saying about Dr. King and Malcolm. I've talked to brothers and sisters say, wow, I'm about Malcolm, I'm not about King. Well, they're ancestors now. They're about us. They both had an objective, they went about it a different way. So that's not what we got time to deal with now. So I'm not saying that you don't do that with your groups or your particular family or whatever, but we don't need that because that will bog us down. Now, we're going to have differences, as Brother Bailey said, that we had, but you work through them. I was taught to try to hammer it out on the anvil of reason. So whether or not you had a group and a split from a group or blah, 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 we ain't got time to deal with that. But we welcome everybody in the Pan-African Federalist Movement. I want y'all to be really clear. Whether or not you're the PGRNA, whether or not you're the UNIA, the AAPRP, or whoever you are. If you're African, you're welcome in the Pan-African Federalist Movement. But don't bring your issues organizationally to us, because we're going to have enough to deal with what we up against the war that we're in. Brother, come on. Go ahead. You can open up.
Thank you. I have a question and a comment. The comment is I feel compelled to share this story with everyone.
Sure.
I had an opportunity to meet another giant, and it was on Dorothy Irene Height. And when I met Queen Mother, and a lot of folks who don't know, she is the sole reason that MLK actually even spoke at the March on Washington. A lot of people don't know that. Like, she made that happen. And he only spoke for like less than 10 minutes. Like this is our kind of speech, and everybody thinking like everybody came to see him or something.
What you talking about?
Yeah, I had a dream.
Well, I was there.
Yeah, you was there?
Yeah, I was there, brother. So
Dorothy Irene Height made that happen for him because and had to argue about it. So anyway, I just want to put that out there. But I met her, and I asked her. I said, "What would you say to a young man that would give his life to continue the unfinished work of Malcolm and Martin?" And she's in a wheelchair. She's holding my hand, and she's like taking a moment to reflect. Like she's really taking it serious, like what I asked her. And then she says to me, she says, "Your enemies are not even thinking about you." Right? And at first I was insulted because I thought she was like saying like, "Nigga, please, like, you know, who are you?" You know, but she was like saying, "Your enemy's not even thinking about you." And then she leans in and she says, "They think they already won. So they won't see you coming." And that's our edge. If we ever did anything, they wouldn't be so shocked. Like, these niggas did something? Because they think they got it. rap, lock, whatever, and y'all ain't gonna do nothing about it. You know what I'm saying? I just want to put that over there so that, you know, take some of this edge out the room. Like, they actually expect you not to do something. Okay?
That's
Put
why-
that out there.
That's why they were doing.
Good.
That's why they were doing advertising supplement like the one that I showed you. I mean, they basically, if they thought that we were in any kind of position, or they had any kind of fear that we would, could react, they would put that out there that openly. Africa on the agenda. I mean, that's it. Africa on the agenda.
You said you had a question.
On the plate.
You said you had a question too, come on.
And my question, I want to make sure I got this quote from Baba Bailey correct. You said, I just need you to reiterate, this is what happens when the people refuse to organize a national movement to protect their interests. I don't think I got it
No,
verbatim.
what I was responding to nowadays, all these things that are happening now, the re-emergence of overt white supremacy.
Okay.
The re-emergence of overt white supremacy in this country, where things they used to, for a few years, they try to do it undercover and hide it, but now they're back, they're more and more doing those kind of things openly. And when I hear black people say, well, you see what they said? This black student over at Georgetown University, they put a banana on her door. So-and-so happened, and when people say that, I say to them, this is what happens to a group of people who resolutely refuse to organize a national movement to promote and protect their interests. This is what happens to you. And when people say, well, black people ain't gonna do that, then I say, then pay the consequences. And that's it. We gotta stop providing our people with, we know what the white supremacists do, what they plan to do. We know it, we know it. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And if you don't do something, there are certain things that happen to you. They put bananas in front of your door. Police feel no fear to shoot, young black males. They don't fear because they know there's no kind of national movement that would deal with it. So this is what happens to a group of people who resolutely refuse to organize a national movement to promote and protect their interests. And on the continent, when you hear about the exploitation that goes on from China and the United States and England and France, all those places, this is what happened to a divided continent. This is what happens.
So, my brother?
Yes, I have two questions. Brother Bailey, human rights was the motivating factor for Malcolm's involvement in international realm. What has become of that legacy? And where are we now with regards to that particular matter of addressing human rights on an international plane? And my other question is to you, Senghor, and that's, you spoke about the requirement, I think, or maybe you could clarify, that involvement in the Federation would be on the basis of being a civil society. Is that what you said? Maybe I didn't understand.
No.
Could you
Yeah,
explain
I will.
or clarify
Let
what's
Brother
in
Bailey address the
Yeah.
one that you addressed.
Well, the concept still has not gotten as far as I think it should. I do find that you find more people talking about human rights, involved in around our position in the continent of North America than they used to. But you still hear, most of us still use the term civil rights and civil rights and civil rights. And civil rights is something that is within that entity, within that, under the auspices. When you say human rights, that's why it's the International Commission on Human Rights, not civil rights. So human rights is the international term. And when you want to go international with your grievances against a government, you have to use the term human rights. And you see a little bit more and more using by by people of African descent in this country, but still not nearly enough. Most of us still talk about civil rights.
So, so yeah, but for clarity, no, what I was saying, because I kind of ran both of those in between. What I was saying was the Pan-African Federalist Movement only really wants you to answer the call of recognizing what our ancestors did. That's it. As far as the African Union, their requirements is that when you do town hall meetings, you should have civic associations opposed to organizations to be a part of the 6th region. So that's not the Pan-African Federalist Movement. That's what the African Union has said, that for the 6th region, they don't want a list of all black organizations. They want you to hold town hall meetings with the average day citizens, and them decide who's going to be their leadership to represent that area of the 6th region. Is that not right, Brother Cliff? So I'm clarifying. So that's not a requirement with the Pan-African Federalist Movement. That's that. And what I was saying was in the town hall meetings, that people who come to those town hall meetings that wish to be a part of that, we have that with the 6th Region Diaspora Caucus as well, who's also working with us. So, I don't want to, so I just wanted to clarify that. And it is really important to be clear. So any questions that are out there, you ask them, because the only recall we asking with the Pan-African Federalist Movement is for you to answer the call. The call came from Kwame Nkrumah and primarily Sheikh Anta Diop, who documented, clearly stated that we should be Federalists. Now there's some debate around Kwame Nkrumah, and I want to clarify that in case people are clear. Kwame Nkrumah, when he first started, was clearly Federalist. But later on, he dealt a little more with unionism. Now that's a whole nother ball game, but what we're concerned about is the progressive movement of our ancestors. Because now the ancestors in the African tradition, many of our ancestors, of course Marcus Garvey, there's no question about what he was talking about Africa, and on and on and on. So those ancestors, I see back there, those ancestors are the call. If you agree to that, that's answering the call. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Am I not correct, Brother Bill?
Yeah.
That's it. Now, of course, we're still putting structure together, and so each local initiating committee will have major objectives, and that's what he was talking about. We will have need to build economically. We will have a need to build, to protect our community, where you have a group, the local initiating committee may say, well, we want to educate the young people in Ward 8, how they can protect their rights in Ward 8. And I'll say this real quickly. Most people may not know this. I know Sam does, that now human rights in Washington, D.C. is supposed to be taught in the public schools. So that is a gateway for us. Now, don't get me wrong now. I'm not advocating what perspective some other folk may be coming from. But certainly our human rights have been violated, and we know District of Columbia is a colony. But the reality is our human rights have been violated, and we go back to Brother Malcolm. So that's a gateway for us to talk about how our human rights are violated every day. Come on, you heard that. We act radio, so all right.
Go ahead, brother.
Brother Duno was next.
I am not an African because I was born in Africa. I am an African because Africa was born in me. Many of us want to give that to Nkrumah. And if we look at our history scientifically, even before Edward Wilmot Blyden, even before Maria Stewart. But I'd just like to say this, since we were mentioning about human rights. My brothering and my sistering, it is remiss of us not to deal with the League of Nations in reference to human rights and whatever other federated things that happened before 1922. It was a sister. If she walked in this door, she would look like a white woman. Lady Henrietta Benton Davis, who led the delegation in Geneva, Switzerland, it is time for us spent, our people, to talk only about what some men have done. I'm thanking you, Kimon, when he was mentioning about Dr. Height. Those young people who want to look at her book, she has a book that's called Living with a Purpose. If you're in the 3rd grade, or if you're a 3rd grade reader, it came out in 2010. Some of us need to stop just dropping people's names, unintentionally or otherwise. Dorothy Heights has a book that's called Living with a Purpose. What is the role of women builders? Not just...
Oduno, you missed my presentation.
It's okay.
No, it's not okay because...
Let him.
No, I just want to say this, though.
okay.
You did miss my presentation
okay.
because I highlighted that.
It's
Clearly
so they heard it,
All right.
and I had to do something else.
Okay, go ahead.
But I didn't say that you all didn't cover that. Okay, that's
Said
why I
you
was.
would be remiss.
Well, Senghor, the one thing that you need to learn how to do sometimes, just like when you're on the mic and people listen to you, as the elder brother was saying. But let me take my seat. Those who want to read about Dr. Height can look in a book that's called Living with a Purpose. And as I stated, there's an article. If some of you, I see all these people in here, and I don't see too many people taking notes. You do what you want to do. But this is a forum, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay? Some of us, we learn when we come to a forum, we take notes.
Yes.
I can sit here and ask Professor Bailey about when he said too much information is out there for us to be other than informed. Is that a decent paragraph?
Yes.
Paraphrase?
Yes.
And I'll take my seat, but what happens is that just as we were taught out of supporting each other, we have to be taught into supporting each other. When are we going to set up our Tuesday night school and our Thursday night school and our Saturday night school? It doesn't mean that it's not set up, but what it does mean, it needs more fortification. The enemy, as you stated, Professor Bailey, in that article, if I'm not mistaken, in 2009 in the Washington Post, the enemy thinks that way because the enemy knows from sampling that we are serious, but we are not trained in our seriousness. Those women, just like when you see me with this button on right here, Dr. Nanny Helen Burroughs, it's not a come to a forum thing. When are we going to set up our classes for each other, even more than what we already have? And those women, in the 1922 situation with the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Community Leagues, and I'm not talking about the cult of an individual or the cult of an individual organization. It was a continuation. How do we put together, panel, a high points of those specific things that dealt with, because a lot of times when I'm hearing stuff, we spend like as though human rights was during the 1960s. And it doesn't mean that the people on the panel don't know that, but some of us don't know that. So repetition for some of us is appropriate because Malcolm was born into the African International, as most people know. But we have to look at the details. Because the enemy, as Woodson would say, the traducers of the race, they deal with details. And we just want to mobilize people. Mobilization gets you nowhere unless it's the objective to organize as what's happening here. Thank you for your opportunity, but I hope get these young people to read about Dr. Dorothy Height and her book, Living with Purpose, right here in this city. We need to study. And I am not an African as what was given to Kwame Nkrumah and many others because I was born in Africa. I am an African, and you are too, if that's what you want to be, because Africa was born in you.
I just had a quick question. When traveling to Africa, you were saying everyone should make that trip for about 3 weeks. Like, how much money should we have to make a trip like that?
Okay, what I was saying was that if you're going to go, then it's best to have at least 3 weeks. You know, because there's just so much, especially if you're going for the first time. This was my first trip to West Africa, and I truly regret that I did not have. I was there for the conference, for the Congress rather, and I was there for 8 days, and then I had to come back, you know, because I had not made any kind of arrangements to stay, you know, for another week or so. It's a long trip to go. We're talking over about 5,500 miles, at least, maybe more, from Dulles to Accra. But I would say that, of course, like anything else, the earlier you decide and the earlier you get your plane ticket, the cheaper. Because we find out that the price literally goes up almost daily. It goes up almost daily. So we started off trying to get a group, so you can get a group rate, you know. And by putting it off, when we started off, the ticket was $1,050. Wow. By the time we went, when we realized that we were not going to get sufficient people to make a group, we ended up paying over $1,400. Whereas if we had started off right away, we would get our ticket for, you know, $1,050. But I would say that, you know, plane ticket, hotel, you're probably going to need anywhere about $2,500 to $3,000. I mean, it costs me not, you know, I never splurge. You know, I'm not one of these people go somewhere and be splurging, man. I be like, you know, and in Africa, everything, they're still bargaining, man. You got to, everything is bargaining. You know, people tell you how something costs, you don't just say, okay. You got, well, wait a minute. You go back and forth, back and forth. And I got this incredibly beautiful cover for, you can either hang it on the wall or you can put it on the, you know, it's larger than a spread for a king size bed. That's how big it is. And it's all in colors, the African colors with sayings in it in both Africans and English. It's beautiful, man. So, you know, that's the kind of thing. But I would say, you know, you got to save up. But again, the Ghanaians are now trying to make it much easier to come in 2019. Now, I don't know what that's going to entail, but that may entail making deals with the airlines, making deals with the hotels and all that kind of thing. But they're on a major, I went to that press conference that they had, and this is the, I'll show you very quickly. Yeah, this is the thing that they gave all of us at that press conference. They're calling it the year of return. The year of return. And it has all kind of information on different things that they're going to be trying to do to make it easier for black people in this country to come to Ghana in the year 2019. So I would be checking with that, with the Ghanaian embassy, you know, and that kind of thing.
Well, let me add to you, brother, just to give you some estimations. If you start early enough, you can get a ticket round trip anywhere between $800 and $1,400 if you start early. That's airfare only.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to stay for 3 weeks, you got to think about almost doubling that for your lodging if you're going to stay in a 4 or 3, 4, 5-star hotel. You can beat that if you communicate with other people in Ghana and you stay with someone, or you stay with one of the smaller 2-star or one of the, I wouldn't call them hotels, I would call them, like One Africa, for an example. They have huts and they don't have hot water, but it's awesome. And the sister was an expatriate, and you could cut that cost. So I would say just ballpark figure, if you're gonna stay 3 weeks, about $4 grand. If you're gonna stay less than that, like a week or so, like for example, I stayed 6 days when I went in January 2017, and I did mine for $1,600. Stay plus airfare, but it depends. You got to work through that, you know, and it depends on your living, how you want to live. You know, that's important.
And brother Jerry Johnson, who puts up that, when I told you, the wall of heroes, he can accommodate about 6 people at his place at a very good price. So, you know, yes.
Well, I just wanted to share, my name is Jessica Peak. I recently came from Busy Bee's Kwanzaa celebration, and there, at her Kwanzaa celebration, they had different vendors and different people that was talking about the whole return to Ghana trip and tour bus that they're putting together. A lot of the vendors and leaders there, they're putting together one for 2019. And the estimated cost for like, I think 2 to 3 weeks was like 3,500 for like 2 to 3 weeks. But it covered your full round trip going and coming. It covered, you know, the hotel stay for that time. It covered a lot of different expenses and costs. And I think the main cost that they said you had to cover, you know, out of pocket for yourself was like food and if you wanted to purchase different items there. But I have the flyer that breaks down all the details. I could send it to one of the organizers up front, and they can, the list that everybody put their names and texts on, they could try to, you know, get that information back out to everybody. But yeah, I don't have it with me right now. But I have the flyer that breaks down that, you know, to anybody interested in doing that Ghana return to home trip. And there's a list of several different things they're doing. They're also going to where W.E.B. Du Bois Memorial was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. It's a list of different activities that they're doing that's, you know, incorporated in the cost. You don't have to pay out of pocket for all the activities they're doing too.
They announced at that press conference that they're planning events throughout the entire year of 2019, specifically designed to attract black people in this country to come to Ghana. When they had that press conference back in November, so they got activities planned. I would say, you know, you might contact the Ghanaian embassy, you know, here in DC to get more information about it. But they seem from, I mean, in this event, like I said, they had the president of Ghana at this press conference, Ghana's ambassador to the United States, Ghana's foreign minister, and his minister of tourism. So I mean, they tried to make it into a big to do.
Right.
They even gave us a piece of exclusive Ghana chocolate. And by the way, folks, let me tell you, I ate some pineapple in Ghana. I don't never want to eat no more of the pineapple out of these cans that we get over here. I ain't never tasted any pineapple that tastes so good in my life as those pineapples, man, that I ate when I was in Ghana. And watermelon, man, the watermelon was delicious because you're eating stuff that has none of that stuff they put in stuff here, like to make it seedless. All the watermelons had seeds in them, you know, and so, you know, but like I say, don't ask me too much about food because I'm not, you know, I don't want I'm just eat chicken and fish. So I'm not a very adventurous. I will say this brother, I don't know whether this brother was lying to us or not, but I gotta tell you this. This brother from Belize, named Mike Flory. Mike was a character, man. He likes to go. He said he goes wherever he goes in Africa or anywhere else. He always wants to eat what is considered the primary local dish. He wants to eat whatever is considered like the primary local dish. He wants to, you know, to eat it while he's there. So he was sitting at the table with me and 2 sisters from Georgia. The 4 of us sitting at a table together. And he said something to the young lady who was taking the orders, and she leaned over. He asked about the primary, you know, the most popular local dish. So she whispered it to him. You know, she whispered it to him. So, you know, we sat there, and he told me later that the primary local dish was cat. And if I had known that joke was sitting at that table eating cat, I would have got up. You know what I mean? But I didn't know, you know, so I just said that. I don't know what he was, but he swear that that's what he told her, that she told him, and she said she didn't say it out loud because she knew that, you know, how we might react to that. So that's why she whispered it to him. Now she did do that. When he asked the most popular local dish, She whispered it to him. She didn't say it out loud.
Well,
And
that's
she
the
came
most
back with
popular
this dish and
dish
gave
in
it to him.
Southeast.
And he said that
The Chinese restaurant.
he said that that she told him that the most popular local dish was cat. Now you know there's no way
Yeah,
no man.
Go to good homegrown
That I
carry
could eat
out
no
and
cat.
get yourself some cat with mumbo juice too, mumbo sauce.
Oh yeah. Family. Give yourselves a hand, y'all, for real, man. Give yourselves a hand. Thank y'all for engaging us. Thank y'all for taking the time to listen. Thank y'all for writing your phone numbers down, and thank you for the insightful questions. There's more information coming out about these meetings that we're going to have. When we give you a call, please answer the call, y'all. We're trying to set an agenda here for 2019. We really want to get some key organizing done, and we want to be very intentional about what we're doing here as far as the Pan-African Federalist Movement is going. If you want to catch the live stream of what just happened here tonight, you can go on Facebook. I got my Facebook page. It's Sam PK Collins. So that's Sam, S-A-M, initials PK, and last name Collins, C-O-L-L-I-N-S. A special shout.
Is it P period, K period, or PK period?
P period, K period, yeah. But usually when you type it up without the periods, it shows up, which is why, yeah. So P period, K period. Definitely. It's like a journalist. That's a journalist right there. Yeah, my man. But yeah, we good to go, y'all. Special shout out to Kimon for allowing us to use the space, y'all. Thank you. Oh yeah. No problem. Before we leave out, I'm gonna pass around. I thought we had a pan here or some kind of a bowl or something like that. A financial contribution we can leave WEAC just for their graciousness here tonight. We need a bowl.
Yeah, because WEAC did not charge us for this, but we understand WEAC has bills, light bills and all like that. So your in-kind contribution will be very, very much appreciated. And I'm sure, Brother Kamon, you want to come up and say anything to everybody about WEAC while we close it?
Getting whooped in the chest over here, so
Oh,
thank you for saying to me. Yeah.
In your house? In your house?
He teaches chess professionally. And I've been playing with children too much. I've been playing with children too much.
No, but you want to say anything about what WEAC gonna do is?
I
go. We at WEAC's house, y'all listen up.
Thank all of y'all for coming. Thank you all of y'all for embracing my favorite principle of Kwanzaa, Kuji Chocolate. Thank you. Kuji Chocolate. And it is really about doing for self. And I think that everyone has pretty much proven how much you can do on your own. But have you actually done anything with others? The proverb I'm reminded of is you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. And obviously, if we are going to get any further, we're going to have to go together. And if anything, I want everyone to realize that this space right here is the manifestation of Kuji Chocolate. We didn't wait for permission. We elbowed our way into it. We are the X factor. And I go back to Dr. I call her Dr. Dorothy Irene Height, Mother Queen's sister, because you got to understand that we are the X factor. Are we going to continue doing what we've already done, expecting different outcomes? Are we going to do like Baba Belly says, and when people say, oh, they did this. Oh, did you hear that they did that? Oh, they cut the boys' dreads and I'm like, what? The police done shot another boy. They done sprinkled some crack on him. It's all the same. What are we going to do differently? What are we going to do differently? And I just like to say this, don't be telling everybody publicly, but I'm saying this to you publicly, is that I have not filed income taxes since October the 16th, 1995. Okay? I'm just saying that's what I've done. Okay? I think we give the government too much credit. I think fear is more powerful than their actual weapons. You just scared.